Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our February 5th Central Workshop. Um, so thank you all for coming and let's get started. We'll just jump right in. I'm going to turn it over to Jaden, who's going to start us off with logistics.
Thanks, Anya, and good afternoon, everyone. So we'll briefly go over the logistics today. One moment, please. All right, so good afternoon and welcome to the last Cycle 8 Central Workshop. The CTC exists to make transportation planning, funding, and policy more understandable and accountable. Our workshops can take place in diverse locations around the state so that commissioners and staff can hear directly from our stakeholders around California. The workshop agenda is located on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. Live closed captioning is available on this webinar. Please select the Show Captions tab at the bottom of your screen. There are a number of language options available there to choose from. Any document the CTC creates can be translated into any language you need. Simply email us at ctc@catc.ca.gov and we will return them to you as quickly as possible. For all of our workshops, we encourage interaction with our stakeholders. There will be an opportunity for questions and comments throughout this workshop. We will stop periodically throughout this workshop to address stakeholder questions. You should see the webinar control panel, likely located on the bottom of your screen. There, you will find the raise hand and Q&A tabs. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Commission staff will let you know when it is your turn to make your comment. Once you have been unmuted, please make sure to state your name and agency you are representing. Alternately, you may use the Q&A tab to submit your comment or question, and commission staff will read that on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link or phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants as this can create confusion for staff when making comments. Please do your best to be concise. Please make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. And if you face any technical issues, please reach out through the chat or Q&A tab, and I will do my best to assist you. Thank you for joining us today. Next, I will go over our workshop principles briefly. So please be respectful of other viewpoints, propose your ideas in a public setting so that we can discuss them all together, and please keep a statewide perspective. Remember, this program serves a large variety of applicants. Okay, now I'll go over our agenda for today's workshop. First, we'll go over a recap of the January 14th workshop. Next, we'll talk about branch workshops. Following that, we'll go into the 2027 ATP scoring rubrics, and we'll close out with our action items. All right, so for the recap of the last workshop, we went over a variety of topics at our January 14th Central Workshop. We did announce our Cycle 8 branch workshop information at that workshop. I will provide some more information regarding the branch workshop on the next slide, but really for the full presentation, you can refer to the last PowerPoint with all the details in there as well. Next, we had our discussion regarding the stakeholder suggestion for the new process, so we continued our discussion there. Next, we also continued to go through the 2027 ATP guidelines, where we covered the clarified and simplified language in Part 8, Part 9, as well as the Appendix C. And then lastly, we did cover the 2027 ATP application, particularly looking at Part A, the general application questions, as well as Part B, the narrative questions. All right, so here's that branch workshop information I had mentioned. So in Cycle 8, we will be conducting 3 virtual regional branch workshops. As you can see on the screen, we will be conducting a workshop for the North, Central, and Southern California region. And if you are interested in attending one of these branch workshops, the links are available on our website, as well as this presentation, which will be made available shortly after this workshop. But if you are interested in attending, you would register for the workshop under the Caltrans district you fall under. So as you can see, there is a map on the right-hand side of the slide to kind of help you with that as well. But during these branch workshops, we will be doing an extensive, deep dive in our applications, walking through each of the questions, providing feedback very specific to non-infrastructure, combinations, plans, or infrastructure projects. There'll also be an opportunity for a Q&A session if you have any particular questions that spur based on our conversation regarding the application questions. And additionally, we are taking site visit requests for these branch workshop dates. So please feel free to reach out to me. My email will be included at the end of this slideshow. But if you are interested in getting a additional site visit on the day of these branch workshops, please feel free to reach out. We are absolutely clearing our calendar so that we have time to address any questions or comments you might have. Okay, next I will turn it over to, I think, Alika for the scoring rubrics.
Yeah, thank you, Jaden. Okay, so before I kind of walk through and dive into the scoring rubrics, similar to the application workshops that we've held, I just want to emphasize that we are going to maintain consistency going from cycle 7 to cycle 8. We are not proposing any significant changes. A lot of the changes that we'll be talking through today, you'll see it's mostly rewording and providing further clarification. And if we are making adjustments, it's to align with the changes that we proposed in the application. I see we have a hand raised specific, I assume, to the branch workshops. So we can go ahead and take those questions before I dive into the rubrics. Let's see. Justine, go ahead.
Oh, my question was answered. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, Alika, if I could just chime in real quick. So we did have a couple questions in the Q&A. One was from Marcia asking, are the branch workshops on Zoom? And they'll actually be held through Microsoft Teams. Justine's questions is, are the branch workshops virtual? And the answer is yes there. And then additionally, we had one question from Graham asking, are the 3 workshops going to cover the same information so that we can attend any of them? Generally speaking, yes. The idea is that we will address different stakeholders kind of grouped together by region. So if you're in districts 1 through 5, you would attend the February 9th workshop, and so on and so forth. So really the same information, but we're trying to group together stakeholders who are, close in region. So I hope that addresses your question. And it looks like we had one more question come in from Matthew. He says, I'm confused about the role of equity in the scoring rubrics. I thought the ATP gets money from the federal government. And as we all know, the federal government has banned the use of equity in scoring rubrics for any grants that use federal money. So how is that the ATP will continue to use equity in its scoring rubrics? Does the ATP not get any money from the federal government?
Do you want to address that, Anya?
Sure, yeah, I can talk to that. So the ATP does have federal money. They are not discretionary federal funds. They're formula-based. And at this point, it's my understanding that the federal government isn't looking at equity in the formula-based funds. The reason that we are continuing to have equity type scoring rubric metrics, the word was escaping me, metrics in the ATP is that we are following the state guidance. And at this point, with the state has not dropped any of the equity priorities.
Thanks, Anya. Okay, any other questions before we dive in?
Not seeing any others.
Okay, thank you. Could you, someone is asking, can you provide a link to register for the branch workshop meetings? Yes, those are posted on the Commission's ATP website under the Cycle 8 tab. They're also embedded in this presentation, and as Jaden mentioned, this will be posted on our website shortly after this presentation today. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the scoring rubrics, our overall goal was to align the rubrics with the changes that we made to the application. So that includes updating questions to align with prior discussions that we had across the past 2 workshops. We'll also be continuing to incorporate inclusive language to capture all active transportation users and not just folks who are walking and biking. And removing any sort of outdated information, as we previously discussed. The disadvantaged community federal tools that we had included in Cycle 7 are no longer available, and so information like that will be removed from the rubrics. And then we'll be clarifying language and providing further guidance. This is based on the application debriefs that we've held over the past few cycles. We've received feedback from applicants and evaluators on things that they felt we could improve in the scoring rubric and emphasize. And so just providing additional context and providing more details and specifics as to what the evaluator should be looking for. And if applicants are using the scoring rubrics as they're writing their applications, which we hope that you are, you should know what to provide in the narrative responses. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to start with the disadvantaged community question. The majority of the edits that we'll be going through today are for the infrastructure and combination, meaning infrastructure plus non-infrastructure scoring rubrics, and that is across the small, medium, and large. There are minor edits that we're proposing to the non-infrastructure only applications, as well as 1 or 2 edits to the plan scoring rubric, as well as the plan scoring rubric. So I'll start off with the infrastructure, but I'll keep everything bundled under the same question. And so once I go through the infrastructure and combination rubrics, if there are any questions, I'll take those before I proceed to the non-infrastructure and plan. So next slide, please. Okay, so starting with Part B, this is the identification of your disadvantaged community. This is across all of the scoring rubrics. The big change here is removing the 2 federal tools. So that is the Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, as well as the US DOT Equitable Transportation Community Explorer. As far as the other disadvantaged community qualifiers, there are going to be no changes to those. So those will remain exactly the same. We'll be continuing with the same versions as Cycle 7. And so the tiers that are in the Cycle 7 scoring rubrics will be exactly the same going into Cycle 8. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Before I dive into the scoring rubrics, I just wanted to remind everyone of the breakout of questions and the minor edits and revisions we made to the application questions. So these will be updated and reflected in the Cycle 8 scoring rubrics. I won't read all of them since we've already kind of discussed all of these at length, so I won't read all of these to you, but I wanted to include it in the presentation in case folks wanted to go back and look at these after the workshop. So we made edits to C1, C3, and C4. You'll note that C2, we didn't propose any changes to the application question. Next slide, please. So moving to the special instructions and expectations for evaluators. This is a section within the scoring rubrics that provides more specifics as to what the evaluator should be looking for as they're looking through all of the attachments and the narrative responses. And it provides a breakdown for each sub-question, what they should be looking for in those responses. And so we wanted to make it very clear and have it align with the application. So instead of stating the first part or the second part of sub-question, we're just revising it to remain consistent with the application and just referencing C1, C2, C3, C4. And for the combination infrastructure, non-infrastructure applications, C5 is included as well. And this is across all of the infrastructure and combination scoring rubrics, meaning the large, medium, and small. Looks like we have a question asking, is the draft of the revised scoring rubrics available? So we don't have draft versions available yet. Typically what we do in the ATP is once the call for projects goes out, we post the scoring rubrics about a week or so later, and those become available to everyone. So if applicants would like to utilize it as you're writing your application, feel free to do so, and then we'll start our evaluation process, and those are the exact documents that the evaluators use to score. I hope that answers your question. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, continuing with part C of the disadvantaged community question in the infrastructure and combination applications, these are the edits that we are proposing. These are to align with what we have proposed in the applications. And some of the edits you'll see is just elaborating and emphasizing certain things more. So to receive the maximum amount of points on the direct benefit section, we are calling out that the applicant clearly and convincingly describes how the improvements meet an important need of the disadvantaged community. And as you'll see, there's a strikeout in the second bullet. So we're essentially just emphasizing that point in that first bullet there. And then the final bullet we added to it explains and provides documentation to illustrate how the project was requested or supported by the disadvantaged community residents. In the bottom of this table here, you'll see that for the combination infrastructure, non-infrastructure applications, we've elaborated a bit more on what the expectations are here. So we are asking evaluators to look that the applicant addressed how the non-infrastructure events and programs will be made available to benefit the disadvantaged community, as well as describe how those disadvantaged community members will be able to access the events and those programs. Take a pause here. It looks like we have a question asking how much funding is potentially available for 2027 in terms of state and federal. Anya, did you?
Yeah, Alika, let's save this question. We do have a slide after we go through all the scoring rubric items where we wanted to just kind of give you an update on next steps and give you important dates on what to look out for with the 2027 ATP, and I will address this question then.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I'll take a pause to see if there are any other questions. Okay. Oh, here we go. What if the whole community is disadvantaged? How the applicants specify additional documentation regarding the disadvantaged community? We see that applicants lost points on this on the last cycle. So that's a good question. So one thing that we emphasize in our application debriefs and site visits for all of our applicants is that keep in mind that the evaluators are not going to be, totally familiar with your project area. There may be a chance that they don't even know where your project is, and they may not know the city or know much about it. And so a lot of times applicants will, because they are familiar with their communities, they'll refer to their disadvantaged community members as residents, and it's not quite clear. And so that's why I believe in cycle 6, we really emphasized in the scoring rubrics, if you are receiving any sort of disadvantaged community points under question 1, you need to make sure that you're re-emphasizing those communities throughout the entirety of the application. Because again, the evaluators won't know, and so you may be referencing your disadvantaged community members by calling them residents or business owners or whatever you may reference them as. But the evaluators may not know that, and so that could be lost, and that may be a reason why you ultimately ended up losing points in an application. So just making it very clear that when you are talking about your community members, that encompasses your disadvantaged community members. When you're talking about engaging with your community, it also includes the disadvantaged community. That was a good question. Thanks, Justine. Okay, not seeing anything else come in. We can move to the next slide. Okay, so this is specific to the non-infrastructure only application. Again, this is for the disadvantaged community part C, which is the direct benefit narrative. And so here you'll see we're reformatting the instructions to align with what we proposed on the infrastructure and combination scoring rubrics. So just rephrasing and rewording the sub-questions to align with the application. We also took out some guidance and actually elaborated on it. So instead of asking the evaluators to look for how well the program reaches the disadvantaged community residents to ensure they can participate in the program, we broke it out into 2 parts. So where the program will take place and is it accessible to residents of the disadvantaged community? And are clear measures taken to ensure that the disadvantaged community residents can participate in the program? So I'll take another pause here because this is actually the end of our edits to the disadvantaged community question across all of the scoring rubrics. Okay, not seeing any questions. Anya, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you. If we go to the next slide, I am going to cover the updates to the scoring rubrics for question 2, which is the need question, and the potential to increase walking and biking. Next slide, please. So again, this is just as Alika did in the previous section or question, these are the questions with the revised language that we discussed at our last workshop. And if you remember, the need question has a part A and a part B. Again, I won't read these out, so we can go to the next slide. Just have them there as reference. Following the same format, we'll start off with special instructions and expectations for evaluators, that section, before we introduce the actual rubric. And for part A, we updated the instructions to align with the edits that were made in the application questions, and so they're pretty minor. Next slide. Okay, and then what we did here on this part of the instructions, those of you familiar with the scoring rubric, and you'll see it when we get the rubric, we ask evaluators to look at or to base their score on these three items: the lack of connectivity, lack of mobility for non-motorized users, and local health concerns. And so what we did with the instructions is basically just add in and make it really clear what part of the instructions refers to which part of that rubric. And we did also add some additional guidance. Again, none of this changes kind of the way that evaluators will be considering or looking at the score. It's really providing more information and more resource to the evaluators and then the applicant too, when they're using this to fill out their narratives. So I think on the second part, the lack of mobility for non-motorized users, I want to point out that we did add like some key questions. So the first one is, does the applicant discuss how the community currently accesses the specified destinations? And then the second part is, what are the mobility challenges impacting the community? Kind of trying to help evaluators think about, the need from that point of view. Okay, next slide. Okay, so here we are at the rubric. So this is for the large, medium, and small. You'll see on the left where the points are, because each of the scoring rubrics for the large, medium, and small have different numbers of points. We kind of put them all together and showed you kind of which point system goes with which one. But the rubric for this part will be the same. And what we did on this first part is basically just added some additional language for the combination projects. And this part that you see crossed out, we're not actually deleting the information. It's stated below in the bullet points, just kind of expanded so that it's a little bit more clear, hopefully, to the evaluator, like what exactly they should be thinking about when they're evaluating this question. Right. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So this is part B. And again, this is just the revised question. It again will be updated in the scoring rubric to match the edits that we made to the application as discussed in our last workshop. So next slide. Okay. And then this again, we're just to the special, this is for the special instructions and expectations for evaluators. And we're just providing some additional clarification. So this is for the non-infrastructure only scoring rubric. The previous one I went over was for the infrastructure and combinations. So for the non-infrastructure only applications, we wanted to just clarify that we want evaluators to check to see if the proposed program is new or a new component of an existing program, because that's one of the evaluation criteria. And then providing some additional pointers on what to look at, analyzing the connectivity to community identified destinations, and talking about the challenges and barriers to walking, biking, and rolling. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, and then this is the rubric for the non-infrastructure scoring. So all we did here again was clarify, and then we added a prompt here for evaluators and applicants to remember to also talk about the need for the program in the disadvantaged community. And then the second bullet point was added, which is the program reasonably addresses safety concerns, challenges, or barriers to walking, biking, and rolling, which is something that was included in the instructions. And so we wanted to show it here as well as a reminder. Okay, and I think that's the last slide. So I'm going to stop here. I know that was a lot of information, and see if there's any questions about the need question. Okay, well, if anything pops in, please feel free to put it in the question and answer, and I'm handing it back to Alika for safety.
Thanks, Anya. Okay, so we can dive right into safety. Jaden, next slide. Thank you. Okay, so again, these are the revised questions. We are making these edits to the scoring rubrics for the infrastructure and combination applications to align with what we're with the edits that we made to the application. Next slide, please. Okay, so for Part B scoring, we're actually jumping right into this because we're really not proposing any sort of significant changes to the safety question in Part A, and for Part B, just providing minor clarifications throughout the tier for evaluators. So the applicant is going to clearly and convincingly demonstrate those first three bullets, and then additionally, we added some more context here. For projects with new or improved bicycle facilities, the applicant clearly demonstrates that the appropriate bikeway types were selected. For combination infrastructure, non-infrastructure projects, the applicant clearly and convincingly demonstrates that the non-infrastructure program, and we broke out what was originally included. We broke it out into bullets instead. So addresses the safety issues identified in Part A, encourages safe behaviors, educates users on safety hazards, and complements the infrastructure improvements. And you'll see on the left there, similar to the need question, we provided a breakout of the total number of points on this top part of the tier based on the large, medium, and small applications. I'll pause here because those are all of the changes that we are proposing to the safety question. Okay, not seeing any hands raised or questions come in. We can move on to the next slide, please. Okay, public participation and planning. Next slide. Okay, so for the public participation and planning, the only revisions that we made to these questions were in the large and medium infrastructure and combination applications. And so these are the only questions that will be updated in the rubrics. And these updates were specific to Part A. So moving to the next slide, please.
Yeah, and Alika, looks like we have a question in the chat.
Oh,
yeah, Justine asked, not sure how jurisdictions without any infrastructure can provide track record for new improvements.
that's a good That's a good comment, Justine. So for proven track records, we're not looking for anything specific within your community. If you, did you want to come off mute? I'll respond, and if you want to elaborate, please feel free to raise your hand again. So I think, oh, for the proven track record. So if you're proposing sidewalks, for example, because that is what the community needs, there isn't any other infrastructure that you can point to as a proven track record within your community, then what we actually encourage our applicants to do is to use any other sort of resources that support why they're proposing that improvement to address the safety concern. So sometimes and more frequently we see FHWA referenced. So any sort of state or federal resource that you can point to, that is totally acceptable. If you do have something within your community that you can state, we've proposed, for example, roundabouts, and that's really helped with traffic calming and adding and incorporating active transportation improvements, which is why we're proposing it here as well. That is totally acceptable as well, but it does not have to be specific to your jurisdiction. You can utilize any sort of resource to support your improvement, addressing that safety concern. Let me know if you wanted to talk through this a bit more. Okay. Continuing with the public participation in planning, because we made minor tweaks to the large and medium questions under Part A, we felt it was important to kind of reflect that in the scoring rubric as well. So this isn't actually changing any of the content. We're really just providing additional clarification. So you'll see the second bullet here, the public participation process allowed for public input to share the project and considered the existing and future needs of a wide range of project users. And then for the final bullet, we also just added a little bit more context here. So the planning process was effectively integrated into the public participation and planning process. Alternatives were analyzed, and they take the varied range of active transportation users into consideration. So this was in part added to ensure that our applicants are considering all active transportation users and not just those who are walking and biking. Okay, we have a question that came in asking, will a transportation program to take people to source of active transportation, especially senior community and mobility needs people, be accepted? Yes. So if your project is proposing to build infrastructure and provide a connection to a senior community, or provide connections from a senior community to other important destinations, that is totally acceptable. We love to see that persons with disabilities, varying abilities, or older adults are being taken into consideration when it comes to active transportation. So both of those are totally acceptable and would be applicable to what we've added in the scoring rubric. Thank you for the question. Okay, we can move on to the next slide. Okay, so this is specific to the large infrastructure and combination scoring rubric. This is for Part B, and applicants here are asked to demonstrate who participated in the public participation and planning process. And so we just, again, elaborated. You'll see just minor text edits throughout the top portion, but we also wanted to call out for the combination infrastructure, non-infrastructure projects that the public participation process for that specific NI program is clearly and convincingly described. And so you'll actually see a lot of these prompts included under most of the sub-questions throughout the entirety of the application questions. We just wanted to continue that emphasis here. So for those combination projects, you'll have an additional prompt to speak on your NI program. Those are all the changes that we are proposing for the public participation and planning questions. So I'll pause here to see if there are any questions, comments, feedback. Okay, not seeing anything come in. Oh, we have one hand raised. Justine, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Anna. Justine just shared the link with me.
Okay.
And I'm, I know you guys wouldn't have known. In there, I don't see any changes in the collision section as it pertains to rural jurisdictions. Basically, small jurisdictions that don't have any infrastructure also don't have collisions because because there's no infrastructure. Nobody bikes,
Right.
so nobody hit the bikers. So, and it's hard to address that question, and we end up losing points because we don't have that data, and we're really small and have low traffic. So, would be curious how rural is addressed here.
Yes. So I really appreciate you, Anna, bringing this up. This is something that we've heard a lot, not just from the rural regions, but all from a varied amount of applicants throughout the state. We added a lot more guidance and prompts for the applicants and for the evaluators in the scoring rubrics a few cycles ago. So if your project doesn't have any sort of crash data to support the safety priority, there's a number of different ways that you can still receive all of the points on this question. So again, keep in mind that the evaluators are not going to know your specific project area or what types of concerns are taking place. So as long as you're addressing what is happening and that context that you just provided me, elaborating on that. So if this is a brand new facility, for example, and there is no infrastructure there, you're not going to have crash data because no one is currently walking and biking there. If your community is rural, there's a lack of infrastructure, or the infrastructure that is existing is not great, so your community members are not walking and biking. That's another reason why you're not going to have crash data. All of these, as long as they're discussed in the narrative, you still have access to all of those points. We added a secondary attachment field because in prior cycles, we only had one attachment field where we were requesting the standard heat crash data and like heat maps. But as you pointed out, not every project area is going to show crashes. And that could be for a variety of reasons. Some communities, they don't feel safe reporting incidents to their police department. There is no trust there. So that's another reason why. So as long as you're transparent and you're open and you're kind of addressing that in the narrative, that's really what's important. If you have any other sort of documentation that you could add to support your safety claim, that's why we added a secondary attachment field. So if you have conducted a survey with your community members and they're stating, I don't feel comfortable walking and biking here because of the lack of infrastructure or the poor infrastructure that currently exists, that would support your claim. If you have any other sort of data to support whatever it may be, sometimes if speeding is an issue, if you work with your local police department and they can give you a tally of like how many speeding tickets have been assigned in the stretch of your project limits, that's another thing that you can include under Part A of the safety question to support why this is a safety priority for you and your community. Other times we've seen agencies will have like a website for their community members to anonymously or just stating their names to provide feedback on the project limits if they're witnessing anything, and it almost turns into a forum. There was, I believe, 1 or 2 applications we've seen utilizing social media platforms, specifically Nextdoor, because it's really a community platform, and they're referencing and talking about near misses that they've witnessed. Those are all things that you can, and it doesn't have to be limited to one. You can include all of those if you have it, but make sure whatever it is that you're attaching to support your safety claim, you're talking about it thoroughly in the narrative. Just please remember that the evaluators will not know what's going on in your community. So be as thorough as you possibly can. Take advantage of the word count that we provide in the narrative and really talk about and describe what's going on. And that should give you access to all of those points. We have funded several applications who have utilized these opportunities within the safety question to get those points, and they face the same types of issues that you are referencing. I hope that helps.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Yeah, no problem. And that's already in the scoring rubric, which is why I didn't really touch on it today. But please look at the Cycle 7 scoring rubrics if you want to see that guidance before we post the Cycle 8 version. Okay, looks like we got a few more questions in. Can we add future, immediate, future projects that will add to the jurisdiction? Example, future school will contribute to safe passage. Yes, you can. I want to make sure I'm understanding the question fully. So if you do have future projects that are, even if it's not transportation, if you have like affordable housing coming up, or you know that a future school is going to be built, yes, absolutely reference that in your application. Those are all things that, providing those connections is going to be vital to the community. So please reference those. What I would recommend with your key destination and any other sort of important things that you're wanting to note, it's always helpful to have a visual guide. So if you do have a future, active transportation or transit type project that's going to be built, and your proposed ATP project will provide a connection to that, include it in your map. There is no limit to how many pages of maps you can include. So take advantage of that, and you can have one that just showcases your project limits, one that shows connections to important destinations, another one that provides a visual guide on the proposed project and the existing and future infrastructure, anything like that. Yes, that's totally acceptable. Feel free to include it. I hope that answers your question. Okay. I'm not seeing any other hands raised or questions come in, so we can move on to the next section. Okay, great. Okay, so those were all of the edits that we had for the infrastructure and combination scoring rubrics. The last few slides here are focused on the non-infrastructure only and the plan scoring rubrics. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you, Jaden. So specific to the non-infrastructure only scoring rubric, this is under Part A of the Innovative Program Elements question. And the only edit that we're proposing is under the special instructions and expectations for evaluators section. So they'll be looking for the applicant to provide further clarification on the program elements, meeting the needs of a wide range of stakeholders. And one piece of clarification that we added was the program proposes elements new to the region or community, or it proposes best practices that are innovative to the local community context. And this is something that aligns with what's in the infrastructure applications and is called out in the scoring rubric. So we just wanted to kind of emphasize this more under the special instruction section for the evaluators. Any questions on this part of the rubric? Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is the priority to fund the development of community-wide active transportation plans. This is specific to the plan scoring rubric. Next slide, please. We made minor revisions to the question in the application, so this will be carried forward into the scoring rubric. Again, this is only for plan. Next slide, please. Okay, for the scoring breakdown, we wanted to elaborate. You'll see minor text edits here, but the final bullet just stated other when looking at the applicant's response, when they're describing their need in the plan area and demonstrating how the plan will serve to meet each of the identified needs. Instead of other, we just wanted to elaborate attachments and other documentation to show that the need is reasonable. Again, this is feedback that has been included in the scoring rubric, but we've also emphasized to all of our applicants throughout various workshops and debriefs and site visits, your attachments should always be working and complementing whatever it is that you're stating in your narrative. So this is just re-emphasizing that in the tiered rubric portion of this question. I'll pause here to see if there are any questions on this. Any? What about the lack of an existing plan or a very outdated plan that needs to be updated? That's a good question. So if my memory serves me right, and I may lean on you, Anya, a bit on this. So we already have that built into the rubric. It's part A, I believe, of this question. And that's partly why we didn't talk about it here, because we're not proposing any changes to that part of the rubric and that part of the question. We're really just emphasizing part B of this, which is focused on the demonstration of need. Anya, was there anything else I'm forgetting to mention?
I'll just say, like Alika said, the priorities for funding the plan are staying the same. And so the highest priority for funding a plan is if there's no existing plan of any kind. There's no bicycle plan, no pedestrian plan, no comprehensive or general active transportation plan. And then the second priority is if you have some, but not all of them, and you want to, so let's say you have a active transportation plan, but you want to do a specific bicycle plan and there's not one in existence, that's the second priority. And then the third priority is if you're updating a plan and it's more than 5 years old. And then the last priority is if you're updating a plan and it's less than 5 years old. So that is what the priorities have always been for plans, and yeah, they're staying the same.
Thanks, Anya. Any other questions? So I actually want to take a longer pause here because we're actually done going through all of the scoring rubrics. We still have more to kind of walk through before we close out this workshop, but I wanted to take a second and see if there was any other just overall comments or any sort of feedback that we have from this group before we start wrapping up. And I'll give folks a minute or so. I know sometimes it's hard to type fast and we jump ahead, so I'll give you all a minute. Oh, Oscar, go ahead.
Hi, Alika. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This question is about sort of projects that maybe are on the border of census tracts. Sometimes you'll have a disadvantaged community that's one census tract. And if you're building like a sidewalk or a project that, allows that disadvantaged community to cross into another census tract that's not disadvantaged, I think I read somewhere where if the project is not entirely located in a disadvantaged community, it's not scored as high as if it was completely. So is that true? Is that confirmed?
So yes, the way that the disadvantaged community question is scored, it's broken out into 3 parts. So you'll select your disadvantaged community qualifier. Let's say, and for the purposes of this example, you select median household income. You'll then be asked to include all of the census tracts that your project falls within, not just the disadvantaged community ones, all of them. You'll include all of those, and the application will provide an average for you. That average is then referenced against the scoring rubric, and you'll be awarded somewhere between 0 and 4 points for your severity. And that's one part of the disadvantaged community question that's scored. The next part is the location. If your project falls fully within a disadvantaged community, you get 2 points. If it's partially within a disadvantaged community, you get 1 point. If it does not fall within a disadvantaged community, you receive 0 points. The final part of the question that's scored is the direct benefit, and this is the only portion of this question that the evaluators score. The other 2 parts, commission staff does. The direct benefit is the narrative portion where we're asking applicants to talk about how, is your project providing that direct benefit to your community members? How is this project supported and requested by the disadvantaged community? And so if you're able to at least get 1 or 2 points under the severity, then you have access to those direct benefit narrative points, which I think is really important. Sometimes our applicants think, well, only 1 or 2 of our census tracts are disadvantaged. We're just going to opt out and select does not benefit a disadvantaged community, when that's not actually accurate. Your project doesn't have to be in a disadvantaged community, but if you can support and explain clearly and convincingly that your project is providing a benefit to a disadvantaged community, you can very much so make that case in the narrative portion. Again, commission staff thoroughly looks through these questions. So if you're able to make that case, then you have access to some of the points. I hope that was helpful. Did that address your question? Yes, okay, good. Thanks, Oscar. We have one question wondering if we know how to score reasonable need, or is that kind of defined? That's a good question. If you're interested in being an evaluator, we actually will be discussing that thoroughly with all of our evaluators during the 3-hour mandatory training that we hold for all of them. We go through specific examples, and we provide them a lot of information and detail as to how they should be scoring each narrative response and what specifically they need to be looking for. The scoring rubric is their guidance as they're doing it, but the training is very much so talking through all of these types of questions. We have another one asking about funding, so we'll hold off on that. And then will these slides be shared after the presentation? Yes. These slides will be posted on the Commission's Active Transportation website. It'll be located under the 2027 ATP Cycle 8 tab. All of our workshop presentations and recordings are included there. Anna, go ahead.
I didn't see if there are changes or if you're keeping the anti-displacement question. Again, for the communities, fully disadvantaged communities, how is that question relevant? Because everyone's equally disadvantaged, and the project creates public good. And we described in our application that there will not be displacement because it was a community-led process. Disadvantaged community was engaged. Yeah, barriers were addressed. There's no place to relocate. It doesn't feel like evaluators have enough guidance or enough on that question because it was clearly discussed in the application.
Yeah, and it might be helpful if, Anna, you reach out to us after so we can maybe talk through some of the feedback that the evaluators provided, because it sounds like we can get more clarification to you on that. But the anti-displacement is still included under the direct benefit portion of the disadvantaged community question. And we've emphasized to all of our evaluators that as long as an applicant addresses that question, then they should receive the points for that question, even if they're stating anti-displacement is not going to be an issue within our community. So if you could please reach out to us so we can look more specifically at which project you're talking about, and we can go through the comments that were provided to you.
Thank you. Well,
thanks. Okay, Ella has a great question about who can be an evaluator. So actually, Ella, I'm going to hold off on responding to that because I have a whole slide dedicated to it. So it looks like we don't have any other questions specific to the scoring rubric. So perfect. So Jaden, I think we can move on to the next slide.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so I did not hear any action items from today's workshop. So I'll move to the next slide so we can talk about our pending action items from prior workshops. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a list here. So one of our topics was to provide submittable contact information to address application troubleshooting, and resources will be provided during submittable training and in the applications. Next, we had confirm application screening questions in submittable, and those screening questions are in the application. Further explanation will be provided during the submittable training. Next, we had a topic of guidance on the use of AI in applications, and that will be addressed during the evaluators training as well. Next, we had a post-track change version of the ATP applications, and that will be posted by March of 2026, so about a month from now. Next, we had provide guidance on the PPR regarding notice to proceed and federal timelines, and Caltrans will provide guidance within the PPR by March 19th or 20th of this year. We do have a few topics that we deferred to the Cycle 9 guidelines workshops. So that includes add an unscored question to the application regarding coordination with local transit agencies. We also had another topic discussing raising the small infrastructure and combination application thresholds. And due to the timing of this, we will be discussing that in Cycle 9. And lastly, we had continued work with Caltrans regarding reimbursement for the 5-year count requirements. And we will be working on that through Cycle 9 as further discussion is required to address that. Let's see, I think we might have had a question come in. Let's see. We have a question. How will applicants know what the evaluators are being told about the use of AI? So if I understand that correctly, it's more of a, from the applicant perspective, is that something that they should be maybe concerned about?
So we have not yet put together the details on the evaluator trainings. Um, I'll just say generally, um, the way that I think we want to look at the use of AI is, it's a great tool for those who, need a little bit of help with writing, and maybe writing succinctly, fitting things into our word count and things like that. And I think that, it's a great tool, and applicants can definitely utilize AI for that. However, I think we will be guiding our evaluators to um, make sure that, you know, uh, if it's clear that AI was used to generate answers, um, that they're project specific and not um, kind of adding information or things that may not be consistent throughout the application. But I think that's something that we tell our evaluators to look for anyway. I think we've heard from some evaluators that that point, though, was a bit um, exacerbated due to AI. So I think generally that's probably what the gist of our um, guidance will be.
Follow-up question, will evaluators be allowed to use AI in their review of applications? The answer is no. Okay, any additional questions?
I'll talk more through the evaluation process when we get to the next few slides. So that will hopefully provide more context for you.
Okay, if we go to the next slide, we can maybe start on a couple questions we had regarding the funding. Um, and then we can continue to take questions as you think of them. Okay, so here we've provided for you a schedule of kind of the next steps and what's coming up. Our March commission meeting is March 19th and 20th, where we hope the commissioners adopt our Cycle 8 guidelines and the fund estimate. And for those of you interested in a deep dive of our draft fund estimate, it was posted with our January commission meeting items, and is available on our website. And so the amount available for Cycle 8 is draft at this point. It obviously will not be finalized until the March meeting when commissioners adopt the final fund estimate. But at this time, we have $619,321,000 available for Cycle 8, and that is over 4 years. Each of our cycles is a four-year program. And then I believe we had another question. Just trying to find it.
Yeah, the question was asking how much funding is available for each project category. And when is the NOFO expected to be released?
Yeah. So, I'm not sure what's meant by each project category. However, uh, if what is meant by that question is how much is available for the MPO component, small urban and rural, and statewide components, I can't answer that question. So the MPO component, the 40% of that 619 million is 247.7 million. Small urban and rural component will have 61.9 million. And the statewide component will have 309.6 million. And again, if you're interested in a deep dive in how the MPO component is being distributed among all of the eligible MPOs, you can look at the January book item. I believe it's tab 19 on our agenda, and you can see it all laid out there by Caltrans. So the NOFO, or the call for projects, will be released March 19 or 20, directly following the adoption of the guidelines. So at this point, we're expecting the adoption will happen on day one on March 19th. So immediately after that item, the call for projects will be released. And but again, stay tuned. Our commissioners do sometimes move agenda items around. So,
And then to
yeah,
add, if I may,
sure.
in case the question is asking how much funding is dedicated to like large, medium, small, non-infrastructure plans, there is no limit except for the plans. Plans receive up to 2% of the funding, but nothing else has a cap or a limit on it in terms of how many projects or the amount of funding that's dedicated to it. So the highest scoring projects, those are the ones that are going to receive the funding.
Thank you, Alika. That's a good point. We did have one more question on funding. Scott asks how much funding was available in cycle 7 for comparison. So I don't think cycle 7 is a great comparison because we really didn't have a lot available. I believe it was about 178 million or something like that before the 50, 40, 10% distribution between the different components. So we really didn't have a lot available. I would say that typically the ATP usually has about 500 million or around there, plus or minus, available for a cycle, for a 4-year cycle. So for comparison, I think that's about a typical amount. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so our call for evaluators will go out March 1st, and Alika is going to talk more about our process and who can be an evaluator. You may have heard Jaden mention the submittable training on our previous slide. So the submittable training will be March 26th, so mark your calendars. And basically, this is just a how to access Submittable, which is our application portal, how to create an account if you don't have one, and just some kind of tips and basics on how to navigate Submittable. And then our evaluator trainings will be held May through June. And our project application deadline is June 22nd, so that's a very important date. And then we'll be holding our review process, and we will release and post our staff recommendations for the statewide and small urban and rural components on November 2nd. And then at our December commission meeting, we are planning the adoption of the statewide and small urban and rural components. And then our MPO component adoption of projects happens the following June, which will be June 2027. And our commissioners have not yet adopted the 2027 meeting calendar. So we don't have a exact date, but it'll be the June meeting. Okay, any questions on the calendar? And we did get a question. Oh, for the submittable training, yes. So we will be sending out an email notification with the registration link, and we will also have it on our website. So either way, yes. Thanks, Hooven. So we had another question about AI. How will you know if someone uses AI help? Just curious as evolving technologies. So, Alika and Jaden, you can jump in, but it's my understanding that I think in cycle 7, we did have some answers that actually had the little sign off created by whatever AI program they were using that was included in the answer. So that's how we knew. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I would say if this question is in reference as an evaluator using AI to analyze the score forms, CTC does perform check scores on all the applications. And so based on our score and our comments, if we're looking over evaluator consensus form information and there's information that doesn't make sense or something that's completely out of line or we suspect AI was utilized for that answer, that's something we would address. But because we do perform check scores on these applications as well, we'd be probably pretty privy to find if there's information that's not consistent or if their comments just don't make sense based on the write-up. So that's one of the ways we'd be able to find that information. But again, as you mentioned, AI is evolving technology, so we are still trying to find ways to mitigate that. So
Any other questions on this? Okay. Or any other questions on the budget? All right, well, we can go to the next slide. I think I'm passing it to you, Alika. Yeah. And then.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. So this goes back to the question that we had regarding the evaluators. So in terms of who can be an evaluator, you must be involved in active transportation in California, have some sort of knowledge of transportation infrastructure or non-infrastructure, attend a mandatory 3-hour training, and we also require our evaluators to submit a conflict of interest form. So here is where you'll outline if you assisted or wrote or helped with any sort of ATP applications, or you helped an agency. This is where you would kind of call that out so that we ensure that you don't receive those applications for review. We are really trying to avoid any sort of bias. Evaluators must also agree to collaborate with an assigned teammate, agree to score based on the 2027 scoring rubrics, and provide meaningful comments to the applicants per question. So I wanted to kind of talk through what the evaluation process looks like before I dive into the time commitment, because I feel like this will kind of explain part of it. So we need approximately 100 plus or minus 100 evaluators each cycle. Evaluators are broken out into teams of 2. What we always try to do is put someone from the north and someone from the south together. We also try to put experienced and newer evaluators together as well. And we also try to put folks together from different backgrounds. So sometimes we'll have an engineer and an advocate, or sometimes it'll be a planner and, you know, a transportation engineer. So we really try to make sure that the way teams are created are in a meaningful way. You will be assigned applications, you and your teammate, to review. In recent cycles, teams have received between 9 and 10 applications. That all depends on how many applications we receive. So if we receive well over what we have in the past 4 or 5 cycles, then teams may receive more. We don't anticipate that occurring, especially because cycle 7 took such a hit in funding. We anticipate receiving about the same, maybe a little bit more than last cycle. So you and your teammate will do your individual scoring of the applications, and then you will come together and you will come to a consensus by question for each application. Once you are done going through putting together your consensus forms and providing feedback for the applicants, those are then shared with commission staff. While the evaluators are going through this process within their teams, commission and Caltrans staff are also doing the same type of review. So on the commission staff side, we are utilizing the same scoring rubric and scoring all of these applications. And our scores are used as a base because we have reviewed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of ATP applications. Caltrans is looking for feasibility. They're looking for PSR equivalency. They're looking at schedules, funding, making sure that what is being proposed is actually going to work on the schedule and within the funding that is being proposed. Once all of this review has taken place, for evaluators, they will have approximately 5 to 6 weeks to submit their consensus score forms to commission staff. We're anticipating late June, early September. Let's see, excuse me, I misspoke. We're assuming by October, each evaluator team will meet with commission and Caltrans staff. And if there are any sort of questions that the evaluator team has, you know, if you're unsure how to score a question or need, you know, further guidance or whatever it may be, this is an opportunity for you to bring those up. We look at every single consensus score form and compare it to the commission check score. If we notice any sort of discrepancies or deviations from the commission check score, those are things that we bring up during these debriefs and we talk through with the evaluators. We point out things that we noted based on the scoring rubric and we explain why we scored it the way we did. And then we hear the evaluators out and we kind of talk through the process. Caltrans makes note of anything that they noted during their review process that they think is significant for the evaluators to be aware of. And then following that, once all of those debriefs are over, we then put our staff recommendations together, which I believe we're posting November 2nd, and then we adopt. So that is like a very high overview of the entire process. I want to encourage folks who have evaluated in the past to please continue evaluating. We value all of your help and volunteer work so much to this program. For folks who are considering doing it, especially if you're an applicant, please, please, please consider it. It is very helpful based on feedback. I mean, I'm not an applicant, so I can't speak to this, but we have received a lot of feedback from applicants who have evaluated in the past, and they felt that they had a better understanding of the application moving forward after going through the evaluation process. You get to see the other side of it, and it can really be monumental in writing future applications. So please take that into consideration. If you are interested, Jaden, can you please go to the next slide? We have an interest intake form that's linked here. We'll also work to have this posted on our website. please fill out this form. And then from there, we will reach out to, once the call for evaluators goes out in March, we'll reach out to all of the interested folks, and then we'll start getting conflict of interest forms sorted out and then getting everyone situated in their training. So highly recommend this process. I can't speak to it more. The level of effort. It's difficult to say. So it's a rather easy process. It's just time consuming starting off. The first few applications, like 1 to 3 applications that you review, will take a bit longer. And then from there on, it's much faster as you go through. And it's honestly the same way for commission staff. Like I said, we've done so many application reviews. The first few take a little bit longer, I would say about an hour and a half. And then as you kind of go through those applications and you go through more, you can probably do them in like 45 minutes to an hour, depending on the application size, of course. Like the smaller applications will take less effort because there are less narrative questions and less documentation to go through. Yes, so the link should not be able to work right now because we are broadcasting the presentation, but once the presentation is posted on our website, you should have access to the link. We'll also make sure, because I know this link has been a little finicky, I'll make sure that the link works across all web browsers, and we'll have the non-glitchy one posted on our website. So thank you for bringing that up.
Add, Alika, in terms of the effort we request from our evaluators. So, you may have heard Alika say that we do require evaluators to give us comments for each of the questions. And, this is something that we require, and it does require a bit of effort because, you have to write out your thoughts and maybe some of the consensus notes. But, this is so helpful for applicants and also for us to kind of understand what was behind the score. And when we do application debriefs, we rely very heavily on the evaluator comments. So, it's so valuable and, and that's why we require it, because it just, we use them a lot, and then, we also kind of analyze evaluator comments in general and, really try to make improvements to the scoring rubric and things like that based on how we see evaluators interpreting our instructions and the questions and the applicant's answers and so on. So I just want to say they're so valuable and we do appreciate the extra effort.
Okay, so I think that's all we had, but we're happy to stay on to address any questions about the scoring rubrics, the evaluation process, next steps. So we'll be available. We'll be here.
I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone for attending not just this workshop, but all of our workshops. So this is our last one, and this will conclude our guideline and application development process. And, look for our final adopted guidelines. They'll be posted on the ATP website after adoption in March. And, thank you all. Like, your input and your feedback has just been really valuable. And as Alika said, we'll stay on if anybody's interested in walking up to us after the meeting and asking questions, whatever your question may be. We'll be here and happy to hear from you. Thank you. So Tyrese was asking, will there be samples posted? Um, are you asking like sample applications or can you clarify?
Hey, Tyrese,
Uh-huh.
you've been unmuted if you wanted to just verbally kind of express what your question was.
So we do, so the successful applications, do we have links to those? Yeah. Okay. So we do have links to successful applications from past cycles in on our website. Um, you just need to look at the adopted program of projects and you can click on any of the projects and it will take you to the application.
Yeah, it's a specific link under the past 3 cycles, I believe, and it says successful applications. And you click on that and it opens an Excel sheet and you'll just click on the application that you want to look at. And it provides a breakdown of the application type. So if it was like a large infrastructure, a medium combination, a non-infrastructure only, you'll have access to those. And then someone's asking, could you remind me the contact to schedule site visits? The link is included on our ATP website under the Cycle 8 tab, but you can also email one of us and we can direct you to that link.
Yeah, and I'll add to that to say, if you're interested in getting a site visit, yeah, use the link that Alika mentioned. If you are looking for a site visit post the branch workshop, like the same day of the workshop, just directly after the meeting, you can shoot myself an email. My contact information is on the screen. I'm the last one on there, and we can get a site visit scheduled for the day of the branch workshop. But if you're looking for any other day, use the link provided, and I'll actually even put that in the chat as well. So that should help you out right there. Okay, great. Any questions or comments? Feel free to type them out in the Q&A or raise your hand. Oscar.
Just out
Yeah.
of curiosity, have any of you come across applications where the California Conservation Corps or the local community conservation corps actually said that they are able to work on a project?
Hmm.
We have,
Oh, good.
yeah, there's, I,
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just curious
yeah,
if they
well,
have ever.
no, yeah, they have. We get between 250 and, four or
Hmm.
500 applications per cycle. So I think sometimes they feel probably a little overwhelmed with all the requests,
Hmm.
but yeah, they have said yes.
Wow, cool. Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Reese, we saw your hands up. Question?
Hello, this is working.
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, the other question I had, and I'm sorry if this was covered already, but for projects, we're trying to sort through what type we're gonna apply this year, but we had potentially one non-infrastructure project alongside a medium-sized infrastructure project. Would those two projects be combined into one application or two separate applications?
I can take this, and then Anya and Jaden, feel free to chime in. So it's ultimately up to you. If you think that the non-infrastructure is better as a standalone, meaning it's going to encompass a larger area and not just what you're proposing in the medium, you can apply for them separately. If they'll be working well together and it makes sense to combine them in one application, then you can utilize the combination.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, and if I could add to that, I would say if you want some further insight from CTC staff, you can definitely schedule a site visit with us and walk us through the infrastructure project as well as the non-infrastructure project. And, based on that information, we might be able to give you some just feedback or tips to say, yeah, I think that would be good if you combined it, or, maybe the scope's not related. It's maybe better to put that separate. So we could schedule that if that's something you'd be interested in as well.
Yeah, that'd be very appreciated. I'm looking to schedule a site visit soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any additional questions or comments? Feel free to raise your hand or type in the Q&A chat.
Okay, well, we aren't getting any more questions or raised hands, so we're going to go ahead and end the workshop. We will be posting this presentation on our website, so you'll have all the information available to you as well as our contact information. And if you think of any questions or have any other comments or anything like that, please get in touch with us. We're happy to help. But with that, thank you so much and enjoy the rest of your day.